This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for this Monday, April 26th. I'm Heather Sells. Today, President Joe Biden approaching his 100th day in office. How does the public rate his performance? And what are Republicans saying? Dealing with Iran, the Biden administration willing to lift some sanctions, but human rights activists say don't give in because so many people, including Americans, are still being held in Iranian prisons. Free money for many Americans. That's the idea called universal basic income, and it's being tried across the country. But what would it mean if it became national policy? And Congressman Dan Crenshaw giving an update after his recent surgery on his one good eye. We'll hear what's said and his thanks for the prayers being offered on his behalf. Those stories and more today on Newswatch. And we begin with President Biden as he nears his first 100 days in office. The president is preparing for his first address to Congress, and he is about to launch another piece of expensive new legislation. Dale Hurd has the story.
After almost 100 days, polling shows Joe Biden gets a higher approval rating than Donald Trump, but still one of the lowest at this point in any administration since World War II. Biden's 52% approval is much higher than Trump's 42%, but he's also received much more positive media coverage than Donald Trump. His handling of the COVID pandemic has the approval of 64% of Americans, but his handling of the border crisis has the disapproval of 53%.
I wish he'd talk about the crisis on the border, which he created. I mean, it is a crisis. I've been down there with Governor Ducey to see.
Vice President Kamala Harris claims the crisis has no quick solution.
It's not going to be solved overnight. It's a complex issue. Listen, if this were easy, it would have been handled years ago. If parents and if children cannot literally eat, if they cannot have the basic essential things that everyone needs to live, of course they're going to flee, and that's what we're saying.
By a 2-to-1 margin, Americans believe Biden should make major changes to his proposals to have bipartisan Republican support. But he passed the COVID relief bill without GOP support and suggested he might do the same with his $2.3 trillion infrastructure bill. And he signed 40 executive orders, the highest of any recent president. Republican Senator Rand Paul says he's still waiting on the promise of unity Biden made at his inauguration.
I haven't seen any of that. I think what I've seen so far is it's Biden's way or the highway. I don't see anything that looks like they want to work together.
Moderate Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says he doesn't support the administration's huge infrastructure plan. He's calling for billions in non-infrastructure spending to be taken out. Some Democrats say he's standing in the way of the president's agenda.
I'm not a roadblock at all. The best politics is good government. I am not going to be part of blowing up this Senate of ours, or basically this democracy of ours, or the republic that we have.
Meanwhile, Biden is expanding government and increasing spending at a record pace. Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says the Biden administration has exceeded expectations of so-called progressives.
But the active invitation and willingness and collaboration with progressives in his first 100 days, or almost 100 days, has been very impressive.
In his speech to Congress, Biden is expected to announce a $1.8 trillion package funding education, child care, and paid family leave, along with more tax hikes. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
One initiative by Democrats in Congress packing the Supreme Court is apparently very unpopular. Mason-Dixon polling asked this question: how do you feel President Joe Biden should or should not back a plan proposed by congressional Democrats to increase the number of justices of the Supreme Court of the United States from 9 members to 13? 65% opposed the idea, while only 31% supported it. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi does not plan to bring the bill up for a vote, and some Democrats in the Senate oppose the idea as well. Well, last Thursday, the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, admitted through tears that his government went too far when it imposed draconian lockdown orders.
Telling me their stories The stories that could make you cry, families that haven't been able to hold hand. Hold on, folks. I apologize. Hold the hand of their mom or dad as they passed away because of COVID-19 restrictions in hospitals. And again, the reason I'm here and I'm apologizing because we moved too quick.
The premier didn't mention the impact of the lockdown on churches, but houses of worship were definitely affected. Well, the nation's leading abortion provider is trying to cut ties with its founder's racist legacy. Planned Parenthood's president admitting that the organization must reckon with Margaret Sanger's connection to eugenics and white supremacist groups. But as Charlene Aaron shows us, critics say those words mean nothing if not backed up with change.
Pro-lifers are responding to the effort, calling the leader's words about Margaret Sanger empty, pointing out that many of the abortion provider's current practices remain racist. The head of the nation's largest abortion provider used the New York Times as the forum to admit the racism of its founder. In this weekend's op-ed, Alexis McGill Johnson wrote, "We must reckon with Margaret Sanger's association with white supremacist groups and eugenics." Acknowledging failure to own the impact of their founder's actions, Johnson went on to say, "Whether our founder was a racist is not a simple yes or no question." Yet, in her own words, Sanger strived for a society that limited births to only those she deemed fit to have children. Many cite a 1923 New York Times interview in which she called some groups of people human weeds as proof of her racist motives. Birth control is not contraception indiscriminately and thoughtlessly practiced, she said in the article. It means the release and cultivation of the better racial elements in our society and the gradual suppression, elimination, and eventual extirpation of defective stocks, those human weeds which threaten the blooming of the finest flowers of American civilization.
If they want to do something different, they could stop killing our children.
Benjamin Watson, vice president of the pro-life group Human Coalition, maintains Planned Parenthood's admission about Sanger does not absolve them from the blood on their hands as they take advantage of victims of the very racism they decry.
I find it hollow for them to call out Margaret Sanger and talk about her association with white supremacist groups and talk about her connection to eugenics and try to distance themselves from her, while they are still perpetuating her mission that is systematically targeting young, largely African-American, largely poor women and families and children.
According to CDC data, Black women make up 14% of the childbearing population, yet had 36% of abortions. And a survey by Protecting Black Life found 79% of Planned Parenthood's facilities are located in communities of color. Alveda King, niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and president of Priests for Life, calls Johnson's words misleading.
She's trying to walk back the truth about who and what Planned Parenthood is today. Ask Lila Rhodes, who did an expose in this century with people admitting they were donating money to Planned Parenthood to specifically abort Black babies.
Watson says if Planned Parenthood really wants to change, it should take the next step.
If they want to do something different, they can use the billions of dollars that they've had to walk with these mothers in crisis and these families in crisis and provide for them long past a decision to abort, but push them towards a decision to parent.
A move King adds is not likely to happen.
They're not about to stop aborting babies. They don't intend to stop killing human beings in the womb.
CBN News reached out to Planned Parenthood so we could speak with Alexis McGill Johnson about this stance, and so far we have received no response. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
In the Middle East, an outbreak of violence against Israel. The Israeli military responding with counterstrikes after terror groups in Gaza fired more than 40 rockets into Israel in the past several days. In the meantime, riots have rocked Jerusalem between Palestinian Arabs, Jewish groups, and police. An almost nightly occurrence since the start of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan nearly 2 weeks ago. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appealed for obedience to the law and calm on all sides. Coming up, the Biden administration is signaling it may be willing to lift some sanctions on Iran in the talks over its nuclear program. But with Americans still in prison there, human rights activists are saying don't give in to the Persian regime. We'll have that story when we come back.
Before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire. Monday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on the Global Lane.
Thursday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel. Your news channel, your shows, the stories you care about. Anytime you want, anywhere you want. Download the CBN News app today.
The Biden administration is signaling its willingness to lift some sanctions in its nuclear talks with Iran. But some human rights activists say the U.S. should not give an inch. CBN senior Washington correspondent Jennifer Wishon explains.
Crippling sanctions imposed by President Trump have catapulted Iran's economy into a deep recession. Now, with the Islamic regime on its financial knees, Christian and political leaders say it's time to demand Iran release American hostages and come clean on its egregious human rights abuses. Simply reinstating the original nuclear deal will put the world in grave danger, says Reverend Johnny Moore, speaking as a human rights activist.
The Iranians were cheating on the deal from the very beginning. They took $150 billion the United States gave to them, and they used it to fund terrorist activity around the world.
He also serves on the U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom, which recommends the U.S. raise religious freedom and other human rights abuses in any discussions with Iran. Moore goes even further. I'm appalled by reports that certain Biden administration officials would, in effect, reward Iran for its bad behavior by eliminating sanctions prematurely. Negotiations with Iran must involve the release of arbitrarily detained Americans and address Iran's gross human rights abuses. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the Biden administration has communicated with Tehran over Americans languishing in Iranian prisons, but there's no indication they've been raised as part of a new nuclear deal. Wang Shuwang, an American who spent 3 years detained in Iran, tweets, Biden officials should explain to American hostages' families if the U.S. negotiation team is talking about our hostages in Vienna. Biden's Iran policy appears self-righteous and lacks a moral compass. Legislation introduced in both houses of Congress opposes lifting sanctions without addressing the full scope of Iran's malign activities, including hostage-taking and gross human rights violations. And a letter signed by bipartisan lawmakers asked the White House to address Iran's full range of threats. But Michael O'Hanlon with the Brookings Institution says the nuclear deal isn't the proper vehicle to right these wrongs.
But if you try to get everything into the deal and right every wrong with Iranian behavior today, I think you're just guaranteed not to have any progress at all.
No doubt many Americans will be watching intently as negotiators restart talks this week. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Still ahead, free money from the government on a regular basis. That's the idea behind a universal basic income, and it's already being tried in some cities around the country. Could it become a national policy? We'll bring you that story right after this.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Wednesday at 3 on the CBN News Channel.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Free money with no strings attached. The mayor of Los Angeles is considering a $24 million guaranteed basic income program for low-income families. 25 mayors across the country are already giving away cash payments each month to their low-income populations. Could this become a national policy? And if it does, what does it mean for the future? Caitlin Burke has that story.
COVID's 1-2 punch basically devastated the city of Chelsea, Massachusetts, in terms of infection rates and unemployment.
We have lots of undocumented workers, so many of them lost their hours, lost their jobs, and they were not entitled to any kind of government assistance.
The city tried running a food pantry, but found it wasn't the most efficient way to help needy residents. Then, city leaders launched Chelsea Eats, a guaranteed income pilot program. Through a lottery, 2,074 low-income families were selected to receive a Visa debit card, loaded with $200 to $400 a month, depending on the size of the family. Chelsea isn't the first city to explore this kind of program. In fact, more than 25 mayors are all running similar pilots. They're part of a coalition called Mayors for a Guaranteed Income.
We strongly believe just because someone is poor does not mean they're irresponsible, and the data bears that out. 99 90+% of the expenditures on these cards are for food and necessities. There's very little frivolous spending.
A 2-year guaranteed income pilot program in Stockton, California, became the catalyst for this current wave. A study found the Stockton program led to a reduction of month-to-month income fluctuations, increased recipients' full-time employment, and decreased feelings of anxiety and depression. Each of the current pilot programs are also under the microscope as researchers from places like Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania try to determine if these experiments could ultimately lead to federal policy.
To me, it's good that these efforts are going on. I think we need to be careful in evaluating them. And it's certainly better that those things happen on a small scale before we have national policy.
Matt Weidinger, a research fellow in poverty studies at the American Enterprise Institute, says a key question for any basic income program is who pays for it. The current programs, like Chelsea Eats, have private donors. That wouldn't be the case, however, if this becomes a national policy.
If you're talking about expanding benefits, you're increasing spending and you're really increasing taxes. And you're mostly increasing taxes on people in the future, which includes today's children and young workers.
Brandon Arnold of the National Taxpayers Union believes some sort of federal guaranteed income program could be economically feasible if it were to replace one or more of the welfare programs already in place.
Removing some programs that have improper payment rates of 25-30% that simply aren't functioning the way that they ought to be. Removing programs that have things like marriage penalties that hold people back for trying to just get wed like a lot of Americans would like to. Those programs need to be reevaluated, reformed, and improved, and perhaps replaced with something like a universal benefit program that pertains only to people that are in need of it.
Weidinger and Arnold stress that the key is focusing on people who need financial assistance, which isn't what they're seeing from Washington. Under the banner of pandemic relief, Democrats have launched an experiment of their own, providing universal checks to parents. This type of initiative is known as Universal Basic Income.
Universal Basic Income is essentially a program where the government is providing a basic level of income to each and every citizen in the country.
As part of the latest COVID stimulus, this is promoted as a new child tax credit, with checks going to parents of children over the age of 18.
It is a guaranteed check regardless of whether parents are working or not. And that's quite different from the make work pay system that has evolved over the past generation or so.
While this new benefit is only covered for a year, the White House and congressional Democrats want the policy to be made permanent. Weidinger says once Universal Basic Income, or UBI, is made available for parents, everyone else will want a piece of the action.
UBI for parents could easily be followed by UBI for childless adults. And then, of course, some policymakers have proposed far bigger payments per month than the $300 that's contemplated in this.
Some of those potential policymakers include Vice President Kamala Harris, who as a senator last year introduced legislation calling for monthly pandemic payments of $2,000 to each adult and up to 3 children in the household. Former presidential candidate Andrew Yang, who's now running for New York mayor, pitched $1,000 monthly checks for every American adult, no matter their income.
We're going to find ourselves, if some of these things are made permanent, with a much bigger federal government that's getting much more expensive. And right now we're kind of wishing away those long-term costs, but those long-term costs are, not inconsequential, and they certainly are not unreal.
The idea of any sort of guaranteed income was once considered radical, but these programs suggest a potential shift in the way the U.S. approaches alleviating poverty. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Up next, Congressman Dan Crenshaw with an update on his progress following his recent eye surgery. We'll have that story when we come back.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're going to bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living Tuesday night at 8:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes too, and so much more. Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
Administering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place, all day, every day. The CBN News Channel. Download the app or visit cbnnewschannel.com. CBN News.
Texas Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw says he is gradually recovering from surgery on his eyes. Crenshaw had noticed some dark, blurry spots on his vision and consulted an ophthalmologist who told him the retina was detaching from his left eye and surgery was needed. In his update, Crenshaw said he is hopeful his sight will return to what it was before. He said in a statement on Twitter, the surgery went very well thanks to the excellent doctors and nurses at the VA here in Houston, but I still have a while to go until I am fully recovered. Crenshaw thanked everyone for their continued prayers and support. And that is it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Please remember you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online at cbnnews.com. And also, tell us what you think about the stories that you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com or talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We hope you will join us next time. Have a great day.